They thought Camilla would stay quiet. They thought that since King Charles was unconscious and Anne was sworn in under Regency Clause 5, the former queen consort would stay away. They were wrong, since she didn't wait for a call that morning. She didn't get authorization. In the middle of the ceremony, she marched into the state gallery and screamed 6 words that no guard ever thought they would hear. That crown was never meant for her. When Queen Anne turned her back, Camilla slapped her in front of a uniformed witness inside Windsor Palace. But this time, the guard didn't wait. He didn't say anything. He didn't move. He invoked Crown Statute 12b, and Camilla was out of power in just a few minutes. She was in jail. Before we show you the precise moment she was removed from the palace in silence in the words Anne said that ended the war without raising her voice, please click the subscribe button and the bell icon. Leave a comment below to let us know where in the world you're watching this from. Stay right here, because this story isn't about titles, it's about the line that was eventually drawn. That morning, the bells in Windsor didn't sound. They were told to be quiet, just like the halls were cleaned, the schedules were deleted, and the cameras were turned away from the upper floors. The fog was so thick that every stride of a boot seemed to sink into it as it hung low over the quadrangle. Sergeant Tristan Merrick had been on duty since midnight. He was 34 years old, a member of the Coldstream Guard, and had been to Afghanistan twice. He was currently standing under the North Archway where the Royal Medical Convoy had entered hours before. The rumor turned out to be true by dawn. King Charles had passed out in his study. Stewards spoke the words cardiac episode in short, careful tones, as if saying them too plainly may make things worse. Protocol went faster than sadness. The Regency Continuity Clause 5 went into effect at 5:43. That meant that the crown was never empty, not even for an hour. In the dark, the signatures were exchanged. Princess Anne was made the acting ruler and head of the Regency Council until further notice. By 7 a.m., messengers were already taking sealed orders from the Privy Room. There were a lot of press vans at the outside gate. Inside, the stillness had become businesslike. Merrick had seen changes before. The palace was a mausoleum for a week after the Queen died. It was quiet, respectful, and frozen. But this was not the same. This worked. The crown didn't stop, it turned. He saw a senior assistant go by with a red dispatch case that had Anne's new seal on it. Nor Charles's, nor the consort's, but Anne's. Already stamped, already official. Someone had gotten ready for this. Merrick was near the east stairwell, looking at his comm receiver. 2 sentences made up the new orders. Regency authority confirmed. Queen Anne will get full protection for the inside. Sergeant Merrick, you're now in charge of the perimeter, upper wing. He tapped once, showing no emotion, just duty. But when he secured his collar and fixed his comm earpiece, he saw himself in the glass in the hallway. Same suit, same posture, but the palace around him had already changed its hierarchy, and someone in the walled wings above was going to find out that they had been left out of it. He could see palace workers adjusting to the tilt through the glass that was covered in frost. Secretaries bowed lower, advisors walked faster, and security guards looked twice at doorways that used to open on their own. But one suite stayed lit, while all the others went dark. It was the rooms that Queen Camilla used to stay in. Her lamps stayed on after daybreak, and the drapes didn't move. 2 shadows crossed within. Everyone knew she wasn't invited to the Regency session. Everyone also knew that she didn't like being left out very much. At 8:17, the radio on Merrick's shoulder hissed once and said, "All units be advised. The former Queen Consort is asking to enter the upper chamber. No authorization logged." Merrick stood up straight as the rain started to hit the brim of his bearskin. He pressed a button on his mic and said, "Post Merrick standing by." The storm in Windsor had just started. The royal elevator opened without a sound. It was one of the ancient ones, with oak panels and a mirror back. It was rarely used by anyone who wasn't used to strolling where others stopped. Camilla went out alone, wearing a black coat, pearl gloves, and a wide-brimmed hat that was slanted just enough to cover her eyes. Her keen gait made up for what the veil hid. She walked by the guards in the antechamber without looking at them, and right through the checkpoint arch, which screened everyone from junior staffers to cabinet advisors. She didn't slow down or show any signs of stopping. She just kept going as she always had until Sergeant Merrick stepped right in front of her. "Ma'am, Regency Directive Alpha 7 says that the upper wing is off limits. All non-scheduled persons need clearance at the sovereign level." She halted a step away from him. "My husband's throne is still warm. You won't stop me from it." Merrick didn't respond. He didn't flinch at the intensity of her voice or the venom that was hidden behind it. New orders came in this morning. Temporary sovereign protocols are in effect. Only listed names can get into the room. "I wrote those rooms," she said angrily. put decorations on them. They now act as I never touched every hallway." Merrick didn't say anything to that. She fixed her gloves. "Sergeant, you're new to close protection, right? 4 years of ceremony, ma'am. 2 working before that. Then you know discretion." Her voice got softer, but not in tone. "You know when to be flexible with the rules." He stayed still. "I know when it's required." Her jaw got stiff. She looked behind him at the hallway and then back at him. "I'm not asking for an exception. I'm letting you know that I'm going through, and I'm letting you know that you're not without clearance." They didn't move for 3 whole seconds. The only noise was the quiet ticking of the grandfather clock near the stairs and the distant buzz of a vacuum cleaner 2 stories below. She breathed out through her nose once. "This will be noted." "Yes, ma'am. It already is." There was a calm silence between them. It wasn't hostile or giving in. It was just chilly contact on polished stone. The comm line clicked on his shoulder and said, "Post me. Just watch. Do not engage unless the breach gets worse." He didn't say anything, but took a half step back as she turned and started walking again, without asking for permission, past portraits she helped choose, past tapestries made in her name, and finally to the State Gallery, where Queen Anne was getting ready to sign the interim sovereign register. She went quickly, not in a panic, but with the type of speed that comes from being insulted and then turns into purpose. When they saw her, 2 stewards at the gallery door stopped for a moment. Someone instinctively reached for a visitor log, but then changed their mind. Camilla's eyes didn't even look at him. Merrick stayed 6 steps back, not touching his radio or making any noise, but in his gut, the plan was already taking shape. She didn't come here to talk. She was coming to get something back, and whatever happened in that gallery would not be quiet. The State Gallery had never been so frigid. Filtered daylight crept through the high arch windows, but the fog that still covered Windsor's higher wings made it less bright. The velvet flags hung still. Portraits of kings and queens looked down from marble, their eyes on legacy, not approbation. Queen Anne was at the end of the hall, with only a notary and a steward on either side of her. Her right palm rested softly on a brown leather folder that held the interim sovereign registry. Her fingers didn't shake. Her posture was firm, graceful, and unchanging, until the sound of quick heels broke the silence. Camilla came in the middle of a conversation, cutting through the room. The steward hesitated. The notary was surprised as he turned. Anne didn't move. Camilla halted 10 steps away from her, breathing hard. "You think a doctor's note makes you queen?" Anne glanced at her. "Not in a rude or nice way, just frankly. It makes me responsible." Camilla moved forward again. "To blame for taking what was mine. In charge of getting into the seat I spent 20 years defending against memory and myth." Anne made a gentle gesture toward the aides. "Leave us." They thought about it for a second. Merrick, who was already at the door, held it open for them to leave, and then closed it behind them. He was the only one left. Anne looked back at Camilla. "Nobody is taking anything from you." Council turned against the Regency. "Not ambition, but claws," Camilla said. She took another hesitant stride, her heels tapping on the marble. "You were named because the crown was afraid of me." Anne didn't say anything. Camilla remarked, "You think these rooms care about you? You think you deserve to be quiet in this building? I carried it through the scandal. I stood next to him while the world spat. You dash dash." She stopped, her anger choking her. Anne walked a little behind the desk and took a paper out of the folder. She didn't look up. "None of this is about love. For him and for the country, it's all about stability." Anne looked up and said, "You're sitting on a throne that isn't yours, and you hit the marble to say that." Camilla's expression twisted, not because she was confused, but because of something deeper, a betrayal she didn't know how to define yet. She started to walk around the desk gently. "Do you know what I gave up to be with this family? Do you know what it required to be more than just a ghost's placeholder?" Her voice broke. "I buried Elizabeth's memory in every speech I gave. I wore her smile till it hurt my own face." Anne looked at her, not with anger, but with a tired understanding that comes when someone has heard enough. "Camilla, you're not a placeholder, but you're not the queen today, and you never were by blood." Camilla stopped in her tracks. "Blood." She said the word again, as if it tasted bad. "You think blood is what kept this family together? It was my job, my patience." Anne put down the pen and said, "My public humiliation turned into grace for the cameras, and it will be remembered. But remembering doesn't mean doing it again. You don't have the right to choose that. I do today." Camilla's hands started to shake, but not because she was weak. It was because she was losing control. "He promised me. He swore that I would never be forgotten when he became king." "You haven't been deleted. You're given a new job," Anne said, "reassigned." The words appeared to make her feel empty, like furniture, like staff. Anne's voice stayed steady, like someone whose job is done. That hit harder than anything else. Camilla's breath stopped. Her fingers gently curled, and her nails dug into her hands. She moved one more step closer to the desk. You don't know what you're taking apart. I know exactly what I'm protecting. That hit home. Camilla stopped moving. Her breath shook. Then her hands started to twist around her glove. Camilla's glove slid to the floor. It wasn't thrown or dropped out of weakness. It was taken off gently, and on purpose, the kind of gesture that made it clear the next move wouldn't be to talk. Anne stayed still. She stood behind the desk with the pen she used to sign half of the Queen's memorial papers last year, still in her hand. Her hand was resting lightly on the folder. In the mild light of day, her cheek, which was pale, was tilted just a little bit toward the window. Camilla moved forward 3 steps, then one more. It was so quiet in the room that it felt like the walls were holding their breath. "Do you really think I'm going to let you sit in her chair?" Camilla said in a whisper. "You think the country would forget that you spent 40 years avoiding the spotlight just because he's sick?" Anne turned her head just enough to answer. Camilla stepped back. That was all there was. The slap echoed through the gallery, hitting Anne's face with full power. The sound bounced from the glass, the marble, and the oil-painted kings and queens watching from the walls. Anne took a half step back, and the pen fell from her grasp. A ruby earring fell off and hit the desk, then spun once across the floor and stopped near Merrick's boot. He was moving before it stopped, right across the gallery between them. "Your Majesty." His voice didn't sound panicked. It sounded heavy, measured, direct, and already in line with the rules. Anne ran her fingers over her face and felt a scratch just below her ear where the earring post had torn skin. She didn't flinch. She just looked at the crimson on her fingers and took a big breath. 2 secretaries at the gallery entrance gasped loudly when the slap hit. They had been transfixed since then. One of them took a step back, while the other put a palm over her lips and opened her eyes wide, as if she had seen something that couldn't be unseen. The notary had stopped breathing under the western doorway. He held his ledger open in one hand and his pen in the other, ready to sign. He looked at Merrick and then swiftly looked away, like a man who had just seen the third rail touched and didn't want to be the next victim. Camilla remained there, breathing hard, with her hands still half raised, as if she wasn't sure if she had done it. The gallery seemed bigger now, with higher ceilings and more accusing portraits. She looked quickly at the ruby earring that had stopped spinning near Merrick's boot, then at Anne's face, and finally at her own hand, which was still shaking in the air between them. She slowly lowered it, not because she was giving up, but because her body was catching up to what her anger had already done. Camilla started, her voice shaky, then stopped, gulped, and started again. She earned it, but the words came out quieter than she meant them to. Not rebellious, just empty. Merrick didn't say anything. He typed control into his shoulder comm. "This is the post, Merrick. Confirm the breach. Say it again. Confirmed 12B. Attacking the reigning sovereign physically. Action must be taken right away. Static." Then a short response. 12B acknowledged. Follow the rules. He didn't take his hand off the radio. He didn't look away from Camilla because the slap might have reverberated through the gallery. But what happened next would echo through the crowd. Camilla's breathing slowed, not because she was peaceful, but because she was calculating. She realized that the moment she had waited 20 years to control had just exploded in her own hands. Anne stayed standing on the shiny floor. Her hands were still close to her cheek, but she no longer touched the swollen line that was growing under her left eye. Her body language was no longer panicked. It was calm and practiced. Sergeant Merrick went forward and squared his body. "Ma'am, you are now subject to Crown Protection Statute 12B, which says that you must be detained right away after attacking a reigning sovereign." Camilla blinked slowly once. "I'm the Queen's wife. You don't hold royalty." Anne's voice came from behind Merrick. It was low and steady. "Not today." "You're not." Camilla turned her head quickly. Anne stepped forward, and her shoes made a soft click. "Do you really think this crown was made to fall apart every time someone hit its symbol? Do you think that because Charles loved you, you don't have to follow the law that he wrote?" Camilla's jaw moved, and a muscle twitched along her temple. "Control post, Merrick," the guard said into the mic on his shoulder. "Requesting martial liaison under 12B. Confirm security lockdown in gallery sector." Control answered right away. "Confirmed. Liaison is on the way. Green light for the containment protocol. Secure all exits." 2 guards came out at each end of the gallery corridor and quietly locked the double doors. There were no weapons drawn and no escalation, just the steady beat of authority regaining its grasp. Camilla gazed back and forth between them. "You'll all lose your jobs over this. He'll wake up and erase all the signatures you've written today." Merrick didn't even blink. "This isn't about signatures." Everyone has to follow the code, she said, looking Anne in the eye one last time. I sat next to your mom for 20 years. While you were busy with horses and headlines, I grieved her in public. Anne moved closer until Merrick raised her hand in a subtle way to stop her from getting too close, not to protect her, but to keep her distance. You mourned her like a shadow mourning the sun. Camilla's eyes got bigger, but this time it wasn't anger. It was something little and fragile. She turned to gaze at the closed gallery doors behind her, and then back at Anne. She opened her mouth to say something, but then closed it again. She looked like she was trying to figure out not what to say, but whether anything she said would matter for the first time all morning. The quiet went on and on. One of the guards by the door moved his weight a little. The only thing that moved was the sound of his boot on marble. Camilla's voice got quieter. This is what you wanted, from the start. Anne didn't fall for it. This is what the law says. The law. Camilla almost laughed, but it sounded empty. Someone wrote the law. People did. People that wanted me to leave. Merrick's radio made a faint crackling sound. He didn't answer. Camilla looked at him. Do you feel proud, Sergeant, to have arrested a woman who has served this crown longer than you have worn that uniform? Ma'am, I don't feel anything. Only duty. Her face changed, as if she had just realized she wasn't talking to anyone anymore. She was following the rules. From the hall, footsteps, clear and even, came closer. Martial detail. The place didn't feel like a gallery anymore. As the footsteps got closer, it was like being in a court. Camilla was no longer a consort. She was a topic. The door opened. Two women in tailored black duty jackets with gold insignia on the collar and sleeves entered. They were both martial liaison officers. There were no capes or theatrical entrances, just soft-soled boots on marble and the quiet power of the law in action. As they turned on, the body cameras blinked once. Under Act 12B, Section 3, the Crown Marshal is here. Royal order confirmed the response squad. Sergeant Merrick stepped back a little, giving up his prime position. Camilla stayed still. Her hands stayed at her sides, stiff but not clenched. She was not ashamed. She was hot. I want to talk to William. This is crazy. He's still in the air. This wasn't his order. Anne was the first to speak. He isn't air anymore. Camilla turned at her like something had broken. You think you won because Charles is sleeping? Anne, you're only a placeholder. A remark at the bottom. A short sentence before history turns the page. Anne didn't move. Then history will tell us who stayed standing. The marshals came up to each side at the same time. Merrick took the scroll box off his belt, opened it, and read the charge. Under Crown Protection Statute 12B and Emergency Regency Protocol, you, Camilla, Rosemary Windsor, are officially placed under non-custodial temporary detainment for being physically aggressive toward the reigning sovereign. Your title doesn't give you any special rights. You will immediately be taken to the Crown Holding for Article 12 review. Camilla looked at Merrick and narrowed her eyes. How dare you read that to me in this house? I dare you to enforce it. The marshal on her left reached out with a gloved hand. Ma'am, there will be no handcuffs, but you must not fight back. Camilla laughed, letting out a quick, bitter breath. By the end of the day, you'll all be footnotes. But she didn't fight it. She let them put a guiding hand on either of her arms. Her chin went up a little, as if she were attempting to save face, but the air surrounding her had changed. She wasn't strolling next to power anymore. She was following the rules. A click came from behind them. A camera. A subordinate aide had taken the picture. Merrick turned around quickly. Delete that now. The aide stammered, nodded, and gave the phone back. Merrick turned it off without saying anything. As Camilla crossed the gallery entrance, her voice reverberated back. This castle was mine before she ever breathed authority. The doors closed behind her. She had left. But what was left wasn't quiet. It was the law. Light rain had started to tap against the tall, narrow windows of Windsor's East Wing. The former war room, which was originally utilized for strategic briefings, had been turned into a secure inquiry room for high-level detainments. There were no cameras, no court, only recorders, laws, and stone walls that didn't echo names, only verdicts. Chief Marshal Ellery sat in the middle of the long wood table, with a legal recorder and a second clerk on either side of him. The only noise in the room was the soft creak of the door when Sergeant Tristan Merrick walked in and put a sealed folder on the table. Under 12B, Sergeant Merrick of the Coldstream Guard. The marshal nodded once. State of the sovereign. Merrick didn't lie. Not hurt. Small cut. Medical confirmation signed. Anne went in next. No ceremony. No cape. She was wearing the same suit she had been smacked in, but the brooch had come off. The mark on her left cheek was still red where Camilla's palm had hit her. At first, she didn't say anything. She just sat there with her hands folded on the table and her eyes on the paper that would decide what happened next. Then, They brought Camilla in, still wearing her black coat from that morning, and still with the two marshal officers. But her face had changed in some way. It wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't sadness. It was disbelief, the type that comes after all the cards have been played and none of them won. She sat down slowly, her lips stiff. The marshal started by saying, "We are meeting to look into an act of physical aggression against the reigning sovereign, Princess Royal Anne, who is currently serving as head of state under emergency mandate. This was done under the power of Regency Continuity Clause 5 and Crown Security Protocol 12B. The clerk started the journal by writing down the time, date, location, and number of witnesses. Merrick got up. There were no adjectives or pauses in his report. He told them where the strike would happen, how far away it would be, how fast it would move, and when it would happen. He never called it a slap. He called it deliberate open-hand contact with the left side of the face. Camilla looked at the wall. The marshal looked at Anne. "Your Majesty, do you want to suggest leniency?" Anne shook her head. There was no show, no headline, no courtroom, simply discipline. The marshal wrote something down. "Got it. And how long?" 2 days. Hold on, please. No communication with the press. No communication from outside." Camilla blinked as if she were coming back to herself. He'll wake up. He'll wake up and fix this quickly." Anne looked her straight in the eye. "Then let him wake up and see what he let fester." The words hung in the air like a closing argument, final and unmovable. The marshal grabbed the form that said he could do it. His pen paused over the line for only a second, not because he was unsure, but because he knew how important the signature was. When he signed, the ink went deep into the fiber. "You will be held in temporary custody for 48 hours while the sovereign's medical examination is confirmed." This isn't a sentence. This is holding it back. You will not go back to the palace until the sovereign hand signs the release. He gently placed the stamp over the wax seal at the bottom of the sheet, and then brought it down. The sound was subtle but clear, like a hollow thud that seemed to end not only the document, but the whole chapter. Anne left. She got up first, nodded briefly to Merrick, and went without looking back. Camilla stayed completely motionless. No one waited for her to speak for the first time in her royal life. By the time they got the car, the rain had gotten heavier. 3 cars with royal marks on them were parked in the south courtyard, their engines running under the stone awning. No royal crests on the bonnets, no bodyguards, just government-issue plates and faint blue strobes that were hard to see in the fog. 2 marshal officers stood beside the 2 doors that went out of the chamber. Their coats shone damp in the portico lights. No cuffs, no force, but also no delusions. She walked stiffly and turned down the umbrella. Inside the chamber, she had taken off her hat. Her hair was wet from the short hallway and stuck to the sides of her face in wisps. Sergeant Merrick stood at the bottom of the stairs with his hands behind his back. He didn't say hello. He stayed still. He only looked. The back door of the middle car was already open. Camilla stopped to catch her breath before going in, not to show off or be defiant, but like someone who still wanted to wake up from the wrong version of the day. She took a seat. The door closed with a soft thud that didn't echo. It was the sound of insulation and rules. Merrick turned a little as the windshield wipers moved back and forth across the front of the car, repeatedly slapping away the rain. He could only hear the engine's faint hum and the rain softly hitting wool. There was no press allowed within the perimeter, but just beyond the outer wall, past the hedges and the gate crest, a distant camera flash flared through the fog. Someone had seen her. Someone had clicked. It wouldn't become viral, but people would remember it. "Transfer confirmed," the lead marshal muttered quietly into her radio. "Subject seated, leaving at 16:04. The line cracked. "Understood. Go ahead." The convoy started to proceed. No horns, no ceremony, just the sound of wet tires grinding over limestone and disappearing around the bend of the southern gate. Merrick didn't turn back toward the doors as the rear brake lights disappeared into the fog. He waited for the sound to stop and for the fog to cover the road again. Then his comm line made a crackling sound and said, "Transfer complete." He nodded once, but no one saw. Again, the courtyard was quiet. The rain had gotten lighter by dusk. It hadn't stopped, but it had turned into a delicate, lingering mist. Windsor knew more than any weather report. The light from the sconces in the hallway streamed over the stone floors, making the wet boot prints from the day look like gold. Sergeant Tristan Merrick walked inside the guard administration area without saying anything. He didn't have a weapon, just a sealed purse with 2 things in it, a ripped pearl earring and a signed witness statement. There was no talking or phones in the room, only the hum of the ledger console and the silent groan of drawers opening and closing in time with duty. He jotted down the time, 16:47, the incident header, 12B confinement, contact with the sovereign, and no opposition. He put the pouch in a coated container behind the panel wall and signed the chain of custody line. with the same pen he had used every day for 3 years. The ink never ran, not even once. Someone who didn't need an introduction opened the door behind him with a gentle click of the latch. Anne was standing there, her coat still wet from the breeze coming in through the gallery's window. There was a mark on her cheek and a little puffiness under her eye, and she didn't have any makeup on to disguise it. She walked into the room like a queen, not needing to speak loudly. "You carried duty through chaos," Merrick said as he straightened up. She nodded and said, "The code carried itself, ma'am." Not out of thanks or sentiment, but with the kind of acceptance that only comes from seeing power exploited and then upheld. No speech, no press. Let this moment fade into history. "Yes, ma'am." She peered over at the archive wall, where the sealed logs of the day were already being sorted into the Crown Marshal system, then turned back. "Let the law hold, even when the house shakes." She went away without saying anything else or looking back. The sound of her boots fading down the hallway was the only thing that remained. Her crown was not on her head, but how she moved. Merrick stayed still for a few more seconds, then closed the drawer, tapped the ledger shut, and went back to his place. The lights had changed to night mode by the time he got to the main hallway. There were no lowering banners. No one said what had transpired, because the crown doesn't explain itself while it holds, it just stands. Would you have stepped in if a royal hit the queen? Did the guard need to wait for orders, or should they have responded right away? And tell us this, did Anne win the crown today, or did she just keep it? Leave your answers in the comments below. If you think that no one is above the crown's code, not even royalty, click the like button. Make sure you click the bell button to subscribe so you never miss when discipline draws the line. And don't forget to tell someone who still thinks titles are more important than legacy about this story. The other Royal Guard stories we have are already on TV. Next, watch them, and we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time, right?